we both know at this point, restriction doesn't work, right?
This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
I'm so happy to have Amanda Zagrodnik on the show this week. She's been working as a nutritionist since 2014. And her mission is to help those around her to take control of their health through proper nutrition and lifestyle management. Today, we're going to get a crash course on inflammation and specifically talk about how food can affect it, both good and bad. So as you listen, I want you to pay close attention to what might come up for you when it comes to common sources of inflammation. Some of the symptoms of those, in fact, you might hear that sound familiar, so pay close attention to those. In particular, I want you to notice how some inflammation can affect us in terms of the decisions that we make. We'll talk a little bit about that. It can be like a double-edged sword. And then finally, I want you to listen closely when I ask Amanda that question I ask every single week, and that is, what advice would you give to someone getting started? I think you're going to really love her answer about how to approach making changes, making healthy changes in your lifestyle. Here's my interview with Amanda Zagrodnik.
You know, it's funny. Inflammation is actually at the root a good thing. It's our body's protective reaction to, outside threats.
Okay.
It's unaddressed chronic inflammation that becomes a problem. So, and that's really the meat of what we're talking about when you hear inflammation in the media and in health news. Inflammation as being the root of most of our disease, especially here in America. And the problem with unaddressed inflammation is that it really kind of takes control of your immune system and doesn't allow your immune system to do what it's actually supposed to do, which is protect you. So chronic inflammation can really trigger symptoms. The symptoms vary based on the individual. So headaches, big ones, inflammation of the joints. So pain and inflammation is what you probably hear a lot in the gym, right?
Right.
Back hurts, my knees hurt. It can also be water retention, bloating, inability to lose weight, fatigue. So the list goes on. Symptoms vary based on the individual, but the root, getting back to kind of what's creating those symptoms, is that chronic inflammation. So the big question is, how do we get inflamed? Where does the inflammation come from?
Right. Yeah.
And that answer is also a little bit complex. It doesn't necessarily come from the same place for every person. So it can be from environment, environmental toxins that are added in our foods. It can also come from physiological stress. So let's think about the year and a half that we've all been having. Stress is really high right now, and that can also lead to inflammation in the body. As a nutritionist, I like to say we have to eat no matter what, right? We've got to eat every single day, ideally. And the way you eat can either help support that inflammation, or it can actually add fuel to the fire. So why not eat in a way that's going to help support and decrease inflammation in the body?
Got it. Yeah, why not?
Right. But how do we do that?
Right.
It's different for everyone. That's the tricky part. So I shouldn't say we all know, but on a very general basis, there's some inflammatory food groups that many of you have probably heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Dairy. We're in America's Dairyland, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big one here in Wisconsin, but dairy, gluten, and sugar, those are kind of the big three inflammatory food groups that can lead to triggering inflammation, or just adding more fuel to the fire. So being conscious of how you eat those foods or foods that contain those ingredients. Everyone has a different threshold and tolerance. That's the problem as well. So that's the starting point.
So as far as those food groups go, I would imagine like for most people, some is okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
like if you're moderate about it, there's really not any huge issue, but for others, it is like just a little bit will set off a reaction. Is that right?
Yes, that's the trick. We all have different levels of threshold, and there's a lot at play there. If you ever heard of nutrigenomics, it's the interaction of your genes basically with the food that you eat. The food we eat has the power to turn on or turn off certain genes in our body. So, my reaction to gluten might look very different to yours. Same thing with dairy, same thing with sugar. So, maybe I can eat cheese with every single meal every day and have no symptoms, where, you experience bloating if you have an ounce of cheese on your salad at lunch. Okay. So the trick is kind of figuring out what your individual triggers are. That's what I do with my clients a lot. But the extra level on there can also be healthy foods. And that's where food sensitivities come in, if you've ever heard of that.
Yep. Yeah.
It can be chicken and broccoli and rice, like all the healthy foods that, your clients are eating every single day to reach their goals and lose weight and decrease fat. And it can be those very foods that are triggering an inflammatory reaction in their body without even knowing it, and then leading to excess fat stores, decreased energy, all those symptoms that we talked about.
So we have like the three major ones, but those are just maybe the most common ones you see, right? Yeah. And then an individual might just have a random sensitivity to broccoli, right? I'll just pick because I love broccoli. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm like, I got to be healthy. I got to get my fiber. I got to get my vitamins and minerals. I'm going to eat a ton of broccoli. And all of a sudden that might be creating a problem for me if that's the way my genetics are set up. Okay. How do you, so other than like, okay, I ate a ton of broccoli. No, I don't feel good. How do you find it out? How do you figure it out?
There's a few ways. So for food sensitivities, you can do blood testing to identify which foods are triggering an inflammatory reaction in the body. So that's done through blood. You can also do genetic testing to understand your genetic predisposition for certain food sensitivities. So those are two different avenues to kind of understand your body's individual reaction and response. And then, of course, just through paying attention to your body. Also, knowing that, okay, every time I have broccoli at dinner, I'm really bloated afterwards, or I don't feel well. Okay. But sometimes it can be really hard to pay attention, right? Because there's so many different things at play. Well, maybe you're not feeling well because you had a stressful long day at work, or, a really hard workout with your trainer. But so testing helps kind of take the guess out of the game. Okay. That's why I like to do it. But there's also, just again, paying attention to when you feel good, when you don't. And that's when it comes to those three big food groups, that's where it's a little bit easier to identify, okay, if I eat something with a lot of sugar in it, how do I feel afterwards? Am I run down for energy? Am I having a hard time forming sentences and kind of having brain fog, things like that? So
interesting. Okay. I think it's interesting that you brought up brain fog, because I think for me, that might be maybe one of the things I notice soonest. It's just like, I just feel a little like goofy, like a little groggy, more than like, oh, my body hurts or something, and then I feel like it's kind of a double-edged sword, because when your brain's being affected, your decision-making process probably isn't going to be very sound, right? So that I might go back to the same types of foods that got me in trouble in the first place.
I love where this conversation is going. It's really important to understand the impact of inflammation, especially gut health on the brain.
Mm.
So about 90% of your serotonin is actually produced in the gut. So a lot of people will notice brain fog or even like a change in mood from eating sugar or other foods that create that inflammatory reaction. So a lot of times I tell people too, if you find yourself feeling really down on Monday every single week, it can also have something to do with the way that you're eating on the weekends. If you're an 80-20 person who's eating super well during the week, and then you're going completely 360 or kind of opposite end of the spectrum on the weekends, that impacts your body more than just gaining a couple pounds of water, and those pieces. So it can strongly impact how you feel on Monday morning, and having to work kind of back to your normal for the week as well.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, like we mentioned those 3 food groups that are maybe the biggest culprits. Are there some foods that can help? Like, are there, again, sensitivities, individual sensitivities aside, are there some foods that for most people would help with inflammation?
Yes and no. So I wish there was a list of like, eat these foods and you're going to be the healthiest person alive. It's not that simple, but antioxidants. So plant-based foods, definitely getting a good amount of fruits and veggies in the diet are going to help fight oxidation or inflammation in the body. So I always recommend at least 5 servings of vegetables a day, which sounds like a lot, but a serving is half a cup. So I always tell my clients, if you are a volume eater, you think about what half a cup of broccoli looks like. It's pretty easy to knock a few servings out at dinner, right?
Yeah.
So I always say focus on the foods you like first and foremost. If you're forcing yourself to eat kale because last week's edition of, I don't know, some health magazine said that that's what's going to get you where you want to be, you're going to always feel like you're dieting and depriving yourself.
It's torture. Okay.
Yeah. So find the fruits and veggies that you enjoy and try to get a lot of them into your day. The other thing to think about is that age-old saying, eat the rainbow. So unlike Skittles, the colors in our fruits and vegetables come from the variety of phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals. So if you're only getting one color in your diet, you're really only getting one antioxidant support. Whereas if you get that variety, you're really getting a good diversity of support and anti-inflammatory factors.
Okay, cool. And that is interesting. That always kind of blows my mind when I hear that. So like if I'm eating like strawberries, raspberries, tomatoes, and red peppers, like I'm kind of just focusing my nutrient profile in one area, right?
You're doing pretty good though, because blue and red are actually the most deficient in the American diet. As far as natural dyes.
Okay.
Not natural dyes, but natural colors from our foods. So beets are one that are very controversial, especially here in Wisconsin, because a lot of times we think of pickled beets on the Friday salad bar at the diners. So, or supper clubs. So beets are a really great way to get some diversity in your diet. But just like you mentioned, raspberries, strawberries, bell peppers. So that's the other great thing about, eating for health. You get to decide what you eat, rather than dieting and following a menu plan of you eat this on Monday, this on Tuesday. Try to pick the colors or food choices from those colors that you like. If you don't like bell peppers, okay, well, maybe give sweet potatoes or strawberries a try.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So obviously we covered a lot of ground here. Like I said, I'd love to have you back, like we were talking about before. Just kind of in wrapping up this conversation, what advice would you give to somebody who maybe is listening and hasn't really scratched the surface yet on being intentional about living healthier, making healthy lifestyle changes? How would you recommend that individual get started?
Well, considering getting started is the first step. It's the hardest part, just making that first step of making a healthy choice. I am a true believer. I mean, you and I both have worked in the health industry for a long time, and we both know at this point restriction doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything is better than nothing. Anything at all is better than nothing. And finding the right balance for you is so important. I worked for years and years, and I feel bad now. I look back, recommending restrictive approaches for clients, 10 years ago. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. We are like rubber bands, and we're going to snap back to what's most comfortable for us. So making small changes that you can see yourself following through with for the rest of your life. That's the only thing that makes sense. So start small. I guess that would be my number one recommendation. And
Okay.
start small with something that feels realistic and maintainable for you.
Cool. Awesome. So kind of going back to like, hey, find the, healthy fruits and veggies that you enjoy the most.
Exactly.
Add
And
those
and
in.
actually thinking about adding something to your diet or lifestyle is so much more positive than thinking about what to take away. So if you're nervous about eliminating things from your diet, a good place to start is, okay, let's try to get 5 servings of veggies a day. If you're getting 0 servings right now, even 1 a day is better than none.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you'd like to connect with Amanda and her team at Integrative Health and Wellness, go to integrativewi.com, and there you can schedule a free consultation. What a great interview. And I should mention, we wrapped it up just in time as her little baby that was just right next to her computer started to get fussy. Amanda, thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time for us so that we can benefit from your knowledge when it comes to inflammation. I just have a few thoughts in wrapping up. The things that I asked you to listen for were some of those symptoms of inflammation. And I couldn't help but think, as she was explaining those, that those are a lot of the reasons why we seek answers when it comes to our health, right? Some of those aches and pains, headaches, brain fog. Those are the reasons why people go to the doctor in the first place. And what you do in that regard is definitely your own business. But what we learned here today teaches us that perhaps the answer is wrapped up in what it is that we're eating, right? The types of foods. So you know yourself, you know your body, you know how you've been feeling. Perhaps it's time to give attention to some of those main triggers of inflammation and see if it's helpful for you. And of course, I love her final comments about not being restrictive when it comes to making changes, but rather working on adding things in and starting small. I know that you've heard that before, but our culture is so diet based. Am I on the diet? Am I off the diet? Am I doing the plan, or am I not? I'm all in or I'm all out. And so often what we hear on the podcast from professionals that are dealing with this every single day with their clients is start small, start with adding things in. That's what really works. So my question for you is, what can you add in? What are you willing and able to add in to your life in order to move toward healthy, feeling better, less inflammation, toward better health and wellness? Before I let you go, I want to tell you about something really exciting that our team has been working on. If you've listened to this show before, you've heard me talk about joining our challenge. I want to tell you that we just revamped our challenge and we're super excited about it. We kept all the things that work really, really well for our clients who have goals of better health, better wellness, better fitness. And we added some new aspects in that I know are going to work really great for those who jump into our next challenge. So we're getting ramped up for our next challenge at the time of this publication to launch on September 13th, 2021. We'd love to have you be part of it. What you need to do is follow the directions at the end of the episode. But please take some time, invest some time in learning more about yourself, invest some time in moving forward. Just schedule a call with a member of our team and we'll help you get set up to get moving in the right direction. That's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. And if you have a little bit of extra generosity today, what I would ask of you to do is to please follow, rate, and review the podcast and share it with someone you love, someone who you know might benefit from it. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you next week. If you are tired of feeling frustrated and disappointed with fitness and you're ready to get on the path to being the healthy person you want to be, just go to beginwithin.fit and click the Join Our Challenge button. We can't wait to support you in your fitness journey and help you to get the results you deserve.